Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video I'm going to be sharing with you my overall thoughts on variant and Criterion content now that we've gotten all of the dungeons we're going to get for Endwalker itself. I know I've kind of beaten this topic to death over the last week, but it's because we know we're going to be getting this content in Dawn Trail as well, so I want to provide as much feedback on the various aspects of it as possible. Besides, people were asking me if I was going to make this video, and I said, sure, why not? Before I ramble on about Variant and Criterion, however, this video is sponsored by none other than Honkai Star Rail. I'm sure most of you know about this space fantasy RPG from the makers of Genshin at this point, but in case you don't, it's a turn-based RPG with a constantly evolving story and over 80 million downloads. That's a lot of downloads. Recruit characters and explore various planets and areas for loots, puzzles, challenges, and of course, story. It's even available on the PlayStation 5 now, so you can enjoy your adventure in whatever way is most comfortable. It's even got data sync across PC, mobile, and PS5. On November 15th, the game will release version 1.5, coming with new content and characters to recruit. Enjoy some ghost-busting missions, explore the fixed troll garden as part of Janzhou's new story, and get 10 free pulls just for logging in for 7 days. You'll also be able to recruit several new limited-time characters. First is Huo Huo, an introverted and easily frightened young girl with a special aptitude for support. She not only heals, but she boosts her allies' attack and energy, so I have a feeling she's gonna be pretty popular. And then there's Argenti, who is a silent knight, but the silent knight routine's only interrupted by his immensely powerful physical AoE attacks. That, and he summons pretty roses with his abilities, and that always looks nice. And to top it all off, the popular character Silverwolf, who focuses on implanting weaknesses and reducing stats, is also going to be making a return this patch as well. So you got tons of powerful characters to choose between. Experience all of this and more by downloading Honkai Star Rail today. As a special treat, I've got Jades for you. Use the code you see on the screen during the dates listed and you will get 50 Stellar Jade that you can use to pull for any of those fantastic characters. So be sure to check the download links in the description and support the channel by trying out Honkai Star Rail today. With that, back to the video. So let's jump right into the first of the three topics for this video, and that's of the variant dungeons. Honestly, I found them to be an excellent evolution of Final Fantasy XIV's traditional dungeon content. It was far more immersive, especially from a story and character aspect, and far more expressive than your average dungeon. Yes, the traditional Final Fantasy XIV dungeons, you will start, you will run down a path, trash boss, you know, the usual drill. That's not technically different here, but at least with the decision making and some of the character interactions you have along the way, it feels a little bit more involved, especially since you're going to be running it multiple times to get all those different lore pieces that really expand on the area far more than any other dungeon is really given the opportunity to, unless that dungeon happens to be an incredibly important location lore-wise that gets referenced non-stop. I mean, I can't stress enough that the amount of effort that goes into the lore and character building of variant dungeons is, no surprise, a step above every other dungeon in the game. I also really enjoy the puzzle aspect, specifically of each of the secret endings. It requires some light detective work. You know, you're going to have to read through some of those different logs from the endings you've already earned, or of course, you know, go to Reddit and find whatever flowchart they have posted there of any given patch. And the bosses themselves add a sense of finality and progress to a dungeon after you've done the runs to get to the secret ending. And of course, I have to praise it for the flexibility to run with anywhere from 1 to 4 players. It makes it approachable for all types of players, even though it's very different from your normal dungeon content, and that's especially helped with the basic variant actions that you're actually given. Now, all of that is fine and dandy, but I do definitely have some feedback about how they can make variant dungeons a little bit better. While having a dungeon with all these different endings is good on paper, you know, it's something people have asked for, more open and expressive dungeons, it also gives the dungeon kind of a limited lifespan. The goal of completing all of the endings almost entirely eliminates the need to revisit the dungeon after you're done, especially since you can earn pretty much everything by playing through each path a single time since they give you currency to buy stuff. In my opinion, Final Fantasy XIV is at its best when you can revisit content occasionally, whether that's through a roulette or features like Wondrous Tales. I mean, you all kind of relate. You've ever done a roulette and you get a dungeon you haven't gotten in months, maybe even years, and you're like, oh my goodness, I completely forgot about this dungeon. I remember this, that, and that. That kind of feeling is, again, where Final Fantasy XIV thrives because it's keeping this piece of content alive throughout the expansions and years that come later. I think adding some sort of daily VNC bonus or even a challenge log entry once a week, some sort of roulette, something to have as an objective to do once you're done with it would go such a long way. It just seems like such a waste to make this huge expansive dungeon with so little long-term value, and that's been a constant struggle with Endwalker as a whole. Also, while I do praise the different paths, they're a bit too similar for the most part. It can be pretty tedious to run through all of them to get that secret ending, even if you were to, not try to do it in one sitting. Maybe you do, 2 or 3 a night, or maybe you try to finish like the left path and the middle path, break it down, whatever. Even if you do that, I think they could use a bit more flavor between the various endings, and you could improve this aspect significantly. Also, maybe this is just the old school MMO gamer in me, but I would like them to add a reward that can't be purchased with coins, or multiple rewards that can't be purchased with coins. Things like the Starboard minion get people running dungeons repeatedly to get that coveted item, and I always find that to be good motivation. Does it usually come with some pain stories? Oh, I ran that dungeon 167 times before I got it? Yeah, sure. And I think that's when you say it out loud, it actually doesn't sound like a good idea. But that being said, again, I just feel like they need to add some form of repeated value for going back in there, something rare that you just can't guarantee you're going to get by the time you finished all 12 paths. So overall, Variant gets 2 thumbs up, but it just needs a little bit of adjustment to get it that extra way so it has more replayability. And speaking of replayability, next we get to talk about the standard difficulty of Criterion. I don't think I've seen Square Enix simultaneously strike gold and fumble so hard at the same time as I have with the standard Criterion difficulty of this content. It is genuinely a unique and engaging 4-player raid experience packaged into a full dungeon. Instead of just this arena you spawn in front of and the boss is just sitting there waiting for you, you actually have trash pulls that function as mini bosses. You have the boss itself. You have, progression through the areas. And if you fail to beat it in one lockout, you got to do the whole thing again. It's way more exciting than just zoning into a boss and there you go. And then maybe it's a door boss and then has a second phase or whatever it is. It just simply lacks a real place in Final Fantasy XIV since it has no item level related rewards, but requires raid level precision to clear. That pretty much sums up all of my thoughts on it, to be honest. I mean, whoever designs the bosses for Criterion clearly has either a different vision or understanding on how to make mechanics more engaging to the player base, or at the very least was forced to learn how to accommodate the smaller raid size, because I just love all of these bosses. Even the ones I like the least, I still really like. They literally didn't miss for me with any of these bosses. That's not to say they're always the most innovative. I mean, spread, stack, and pair mechanics are pretty much part of every single boss, I would say ad nauseum. But the game forces you to really think and observe to figure out how to resolve those types of things. The ability to identify safe spots amongst a sea of visually obfuscating effects and mechanics while also adjusting to each boss's unique method of displaying said mechanics forces players to reach outside of the game's usual comfort zones and really hone in on what makes a good raider a good raider. I mean, look at the final boss to the first Criterion dungeon with these tripwires, being able to identify the exact spots to get the timing down to make sure you can safely dodge the follow-up AoEs, identify which pattern is safe first, and then when you have to do it again towards the end, you still have to identify where to start. And I love the tripwire mechanic. I was actually surprised we didn't see it as a part of other stuff afterwards, but I can also imagine doing it with 8 people would be genuinely infuriating. But we don't get to see cool stuff like this in 8-player raids because there's just so many different aspects happening at the same time. In fact, I think the final boss of the first Criterion is a shining example of stuff they can do with 4-player raid content that is a little bit more unique, I suppose. And with only 4 players, there's nowhere to hide. Your personal performance is gonna be on full display, and this content will really help you hone that particular skill set should you so desire. But that being said, every stick needs a carrot, and Criterion is desperately lacking one. Yes, there is a mount and a few other small things, but if you're going to ask for raid-relevant skills, then you need to give raid-relevant rewards, and they simply aren't there. I mean, yeah, sure, you'll get people like me, hardcore raiders looking to test and hone their skills, so we're ready for whatever the game throws at us next. We'll praise the boss mechanics and creativity, but every single person you see talking about how cool these bosses are and how cool the dungeons are has subsequently said, what the heck is going on with these rewards? Not a single one of us has been quiet about it. And we're really hoping that for the sake of the content and its longevity, that they listen, because we have our motivation. We know why we're going into the dungeon, even though it lacks the rewards. And we also know why we're not doing it repeatedly. We're mostly just getting that one and done. We know that this could appeal to a lot more people and that it doesn't. And we want it to. So we are screaming at the top of our lungs for better rewards from the standard difficulty. And we're going to talk about that particular bit in a second here. We want it for your sake, for the people who would love to do it, but can't find people around you motivated enough to do it because it lacks a carrot. It lacks rewards. We want those for you, not for us, because we already play this game way too much, for you. And then you move on to Criterion Savage, which is a really strange one. I mean, it's literally the exact same mechanics as Criterion Normal, but the enemies have more health, they deal more damage, and if you die, you stay dead until your party wipes. There's no getting up. There's also a dungeon-wide enrage from the moment you pull the first mob of the dungeon up until you slay the last boss that you have to be managing, so you have to go between all the packs and everything really quickly and make sure that you're balancing how you use your 2 minutes on trash and your cooldowns on trash versus the bosses. Again, really cool skill set to be forced to work on, but in its current form, it just is, I don't know, it's just strange. Like, it makes for great practice for something like Ultimate, needing to go 20 plus minutes without a major mistake. That fine tunes players for the more grueling Ultimates, especially things like DSR and Top, without needing the same level of executional prowess. They did also add Ultimate style rewards in the most recent Criterion, which is pretty apt given the difficulty of the content. That being said, I can't help but wonder if this could be something more. I mean, I remember my chat having a discussion saying that maybe they should ditch permadeath and just have more challenging bosses, actually make it Savage. More importantly, I've been saying since the first one, where's the secret boss from the variant dungeons? That should be something that's absolutely present in Savage, and especially if you were to get rid of the permadeath, that would make even more sense. It's just, again, feels like such a waste. There could be this extra element to it that's just so much more interesting, and it's not there. But you can't simply add the secret boss on when it's already a 24-minute dungeon. What are you going to make it, a 30 to 32-minute, no death fest? That's just, I don't even think that would be fun at that point, but I mean, maybe that's just me. I don't know which approach is better or worse. I just don't know. But this content, it's so strange. Honestly, it could not exist at all. I wouldn't even complain if Criterion Savage just was deleted and they didn't do it anymore. I don't think the VNC content would be any worse off without this piece of particular content. Perhaps instead of justifying how we can reward Criterion Savage better, or what they need to do in order to make the Savage better or make it actually Savage, maybe just get rid of it and pour more effort into the standard difficulty. Include the you know what you could do? Just thought of this now. You could include the secret boss in normal mode, but you have to do the mechanics from each of the bosses in a specific way, or you have to do something during the trash pulls in a specific way in order to open the secret boss at the end. And then that boss is like a significantly amped up version of the one from the secret ending. That keeps it in line with Variant's kind of puzzle solving aspect, gives it that extra layer where you could go for a standard clear or you could go for a secret boss clear. And then, I don't know, you just don't need Savage. And then it makes it easier to justify putting item level rewards in regular Criterion. So maybe that's the play. Maybe just don't have Savage and make regular Criterion better overall. Basically, what I'm saying is, I think this is one of those cases where Square nailed every idea they had on the whiteboard, but couldn't stick the landing. It has the potential to be a mainstay of content for expansions to come, appealing to people who don't mind raiding in smaller groups and hardcore raiders who are looking for bite-sized chunks of progression between everything and practice between more serious 8-man content, things they can take their friends into who may not necessarily be super experienced with raiding, but they don't have to worry so much about upsetting 7 other people. It's just a small group of friends getting together to do this more difficult dungeon. but it needs a push. And any of those things I listed would make any individual aspect better. But they all need to happen, or at least a bunch of them need to happen all at once to kind of pull the content into its full potential. I don't think this needs to be like a Mythic Plus style thing from WoW. I don't think they need to drastically overhaul the idea and go back to the drawing board. It just needs to be tuned. And if they can get that right, then again, we are looking at something that we will probably look forward to for years and years to come. Anyway, those are my overall thoughts on Variant and Criterion Savage by extension. Thanks for watching. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section of the video below. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share. And stay tuned. I think I have one more Criterion-related video coming out, and I'm actually going to start reviewing a lot of aspects of Endwalker, talking about the things they got right, things they got wrong, because at this point, we are pretty much done with it and waiting for Dawntrail. So, with that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care.